Thank you so much for your time on the PM News Desk.
Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to the viewers.
Doc, some very distressing images coming out of Mali right now. Talk us through your diagnosis of the crisis there. We need to understand the causes and the groups who perpetuate such violence, and that's become rather urgent now.
Definitely, I think the crisis of Mali needs to be traced back to the dislocation or destruction of Libya following the NATO bombing targeting Muammar Gaddafi. I think many soldiers left Libya with arms and ammunition. Some went to Mali, others went to Niger. But it's precisely with Mali that old antagonism due to the perception that the Tuareg community living in the northern region of Mali have been marginalized, actually a cause of the dislocation of the country. And while the Tuaregs relaunched new attack on the country, the south experienced a military coup which really led Mali into the chaos. It was only late in 2013 with a French operation, military operation Serval, that Mali was able to pull itself together to reconquer the south, establish political legitimacy in the south, and now decided to enter into dialogue with the rebels group in the north that ultimately resulted into the peace agreement that was signed in June. But one thing is to sign the agreement, the other one is to create conditions for its implementations. And the security environment has deteriorated. The terrorist group like ACMI, Ansardine, Mujao, and others have been defeated, but the defeat is not complete because they are now almost in the country, so preparing and launching bombing attacks on key security issues causing security issues in Mali.
Doctor, the terror groups do indeed look stronger than even before, and the attacks look to be moving southward toward the center of the country. What is the actual state of play in Mali right now? Because it does look like they're far from defeated.
Look, I think we are dealing here with asymmetric threats. I think the terrorists are well organized. They work on intelligence and probably ahead of a state whose mechanisms of protection and defense are not that adequate. Of course, you have peacekeepers, UN peacekeepers in the country. But if you have a group of elusive fighters who can act independently, it is extremely difficult to follow their movement. And that's what we are seeing now, taking the war into urban center for the simple reason to have hostages, because keeping hostages and asking for ransom provide them with enough resources to continue waging the war on what they call the infidels, so those who are fighting against Islam. So you have the recycled membership of ACMI, the Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, and the other members of Ansardine led by Yad Agalin together conniving and planning attacks on Mali and particularly on also peacekeepers in the country.
Doctor, it took 8 long, tedious months, but finally in June this year, Mali's government and some of the armed groups penned a tentative agreement. But the Islamist fighters, of course, were not part of those negotiations. What would be the way forward now, as disarmament clearly is not on the cards for now, that is?
No, the disarmament has been planned in the agreement. I think the agreement was clear about disarmament of a group. So the problem is the absence of government have created the framework for the mushrooming of armed factions, both on the side of government or on the side of the Tuareg. So it's difficult to have a kind of an inventory of who is armed and who is not, who is on the side of the rebellion and who is on the side of terrorism. And the Mali government is very clear on that. I think they are prepared to negotiate with the Tuaregs, but they are not prepared to negotiate with the terrorists. And the counter-terrorist strategy that is in place mostly is inspired by external partners. So what Mali needs to do is to define its own national strategy against the terrorism, which is so far has not been in place, and really they're creating a problem. You have the attack in Bamako, you have the attack in Sevare, in Mopti, in the center of the country, and in the northern region, I think you have news of attacks every day.
What are the implications, Doctor, of a long, drawn-out Islamist insurgency in Mali for the wider region?
I think it's already having an impact on the region. Already we have news that countries that are part of the coalition force put in place by the regional forces attacking Boko Haram could also really be a kind of an enticement to terrorist attack in other countries. Niger has already experienced a number of attacks. Cote d'Ivoire has already experienced two attacks. And other countries are almost living on the edge, fearing attack. So I think that the growing terrorist activities in the West African region will really be one of the most serious causes of concern for the countries in the region in the long run, from Mali to Nigeria.
Dr. David Zoumenou, a senior researcher with the Institute of Security Studies, thank you so much for sharing your time with us on the PM News Desk.